Hey, so had an interesting conversation last week with a guy who is kind of like mentoring or just kind of like walking along in this sort of life journey with a guy who is a Christian, but he just went to college, and it looks like everybody else is having a lot more fun, and sort of the temptations of, stereotypical college life, partying and things like that are starting to be a challenge, to his faith, and he's kind of wrestling with it. When I heard this from this friend of mine, right away my heart just like went out for this guy because I kind of like I've been there, and frankly, it's not too long ago that I kind of like got out of college and had to come face to face with the error of my ways, and frankly, what it felt like was having just a realization that I had made a big mistake and that there was going to be a cost to my decisions. And I felt like a stained rag was the exact picture that I got when I decided to take my faith seriously again after college. And so I felt compelled to put some words on a video here that could be shared to anyone really who is wondering, if it might be worth trying out the college life, and from someone who did it, and I can tell you that it's a shallow experience. That it is, Galatians 5 talks about, being a slave to, drunkenness and all kinds of stuff that come along with this desire in college to do certain things. And it's so true looking back. And then when you eventually, if you come out of it, first of all, realize you go down that path, you might not come out of it. I know a lot of guys who became addicted in one way or another to alcohol or drugs or sex or all two or three of them. So you may not come out of it is one thing you got to realize when you're staring down that kind of temptation. If you do, and you meet someone later, that a potential husband or spouse, there's going to be residual effects on that. It's in my own marriage. It's something we talk about. We battle through the sins of my youth and my past, and so again, Galatians 5 is a great place, but really the key, I think, to getting through this is, one, as Joshua 1 says, to stay in the, how does a young man stay on a straight path? He stays in the Word. You got to find, you're involved in your studies and your future. Don't forget to study the Word of God through college. Second, and probably almost as important, is you got to be in community. You got to find some other believers on campus or close by or back home that you can be in contact with regularly, because as soon as you start to get separated from the fellowship of believers, you're ripe for attack, and you're weaker. And over time, that God works in that community, the fellowship, the accountability, the sharpening that happens, the brothers that call you at just the right moment when you're going down the wrong direction. That's the way God works practically. And then I think just praying. There's a certain suffering that comes with this faith. I think we all kind of recognize that by now, but realizing there's going to be times where God is calling you to do something that isn't what you want to do. You do it anyway out of obedience. It sucks. It feels like you're suffering. It feels like you're missing out. It feels like you're doing what everybody else, isn't doing. And yet God, when you take those steps of faith, he works in it undoubtedly, undeniably, blesses you, puts you far beyond what you could have imagined when you made that step of that step of obedience. So we don't always see this day to day. Sometimes it takes time, months, even years, till you realize what God's doing on a bigger picture. But if I could go back and do it again, 100% without a question, I lost a lot of time and energy and discipline doing what I did. Paid a heavy price, still pay for it. Um, Thankful that God is redeeming and has redeemed so much from that time. And my word of advice is literally just to stay in the Word, stay in fellowship, stay in prayer, fall at God's feet when you feel like you're just suffering and can't do anymore. He will deliver you through it. And I hope that's helpful. The result of doing this is again undescribable, far exceedingly abundantly beyond what you could imagine in terms of relationships. I guarantee you, doing the things that seem sexy in college don't result in the same kinds of relationships that walking with God does. Where I had a lot of drinking buddies and things like that, and a few have transferred. Mostly it wasn't, they didn't have my back. These guys weren't loving me truly, and I wasn't loving them, and I was doing dumb things and cheating and stealing and doing dumb things, and so I wasn't who I'm not proud of the way I acted. I wasn't who God designed me to be at all. And it was just these little decisions to entertain the things that the college life made seem more interesting, that led me down there. And I pray that you don't go that direction. Um, just make myself available to continue to have these conversations with young people and encourage them to press into the Lord in this critical time of their lives. And just pray right now, even that God would just touch people right where they are and speak to them in ways that would remind them that He is the King of Kings, and they are inheritors of the kingdom of heaven and co-heirs with Christ, and have all power and authority to walk through college unscathed, really, if it should be His will and their will. Amen.